You see, we are under obligation to bear witness to Jehovah, to tell the truth about him, and to expose false teachings that misrepresent Jehovah.
Here's a very important point that I think we need to make right out the gate, because if we don't understand this next point, all of what I'm going to say here will fall apart in the minds and in the hearts of some who are watching right now. We need to understand this one thing. Two standards of weights are detestable to Jehovah. Are we prepared to compare ourselves to other religions using the same set of scales? If we're not prepared to do that, again, what I'm going to say here during this segment won't land. Let's first talk about what apostasy is by definition. According to study.com, it says apostasy is defined as the act of renouncing or abandoning one's religion. It can also be associated with a refusal to adopt or follow a given religion, generally within a territory controlled by that religion. The definition of an apostate is someone who performs this action, and the religion in question may have sanctions or punishments directed against that person. The question of apostasy and whether and how it should be punished has primarily been a concern in Abrahamic religions, which are the religions that trace their roots to Abraham, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. While Christianity used to practice the punishment of apostasy, it no longer does. Islam, however, still censures those who leave the religion. Let's look at 4 different definitions additionally to this one here that we just read. From dictionary.com, it says, apostasy is the abandonment or renunciation of a religious or political belief. From Merriam-Webster, abandonment of a previous loyalty. collinsdictionary.com, abandonment of one's religious faith, political party, or cause. And a Cambridge dictionary says the act of giving up your religious or political beliefs and leaving a religion or a political party. The last sentence in that definition from study.com says that Islam still punishes those who commit apostasy. And Christianity, not so much. It said they don't, but I say not so much because this religion, the JWs, are indeed a Christian religion. In fact, they look at themselves as being the true Christian religion. By definition, it feels very benign, harmless. You leave your religion. Simple. Or you refuse to practice a religion if it's the only religion in a territory in which you reside. Seems harmless enough, but it brings heavy sanctions depending on which religion you're leaving. So there are heavy sanctions in place for those who commit apostasy from them. All right, let's take a look at this article, the first page of this article. It's entitled, Can You Be True to God, Yet Hide the Facts? Here's how it begins. What results when a lie is let go unchallenged? Does not silence help the lie to pass as truth, to have freer sway to influence many, perhaps to their serious harm? When persons are in great danger from a source that they do not suspect or are being misled by those they consider their friends, is it an unkindness to warn them? They may prefer not to believe the warning. They may even resent it. But does that free one from moral responsibility to give that warning? And then the other thing I have highlighted there in the red square, that those prophets of old, those individuals from old, from the days of the Bible, have had to expose falsehood and wrongdoing and warn people of dangers and deception, not just in a general way, but in a specific way, in the interest of pure worship. It would have been far easier to keep silent or to say only what people wanted to hear, but faithfulness to God and love of neighbor moved them to speak. The point is, if you find error, deception, lies, mistakes, misrepresentations, any of that in your cherished religion, do you have the responsibility to speak up? According to this article, you do.
You see, we are under obligation to bear witness to Jehovah, to tell the truth about him, and to expose false teachings that misrepresent Jehovah.
Here's another article I want to share with you, if you don't mind taking a look at this. This comes from the Awake of 1987. Way down at the bottom there, that last paragraph I have highlighted in blue says, if your church fails to act, will you? If after making an honest investigation, you are less than pleased with what you see, do more than just complain. A journalist, while commenting on Karl Barth's statement that a church is its members, logically concluded, church members are responsible for what the church says and does. So ask yourself, am I willing to share responsibility for everything my church says and does? Can I really be proud of having all its members as spiritual brothers? That's important, isn't it? It's like if you see a bridge out ahead and you're ahead of folks behind you, you see a bridge out ahead. What is your moral responsibility? Certainly you want to save yourself, but you also want to tell others, right? You want to do your best to stop others. So if you don't, what is that called?
We could call this a sin of omission.
Yes, a sin of omission. You do not want to just remain silent.
So our primary allegiance is to Jehovah God. Now the governing body realizes that if we were to give some direction that is not in harmony with God's word, all of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide who have the Bible would notice that, and they would see that it was wrong direction.
You should have the courage. We should have the courage to speak up. Under the heading of apostasy, definition is abandoning or deserting the worship and service of God. Actually, a rebellion against Jehovah God. Some apostates profess to know and serve God, but reject teachings or requirements set out in His Word. Others claim to believe the Bible, but reject Jehovah's organization. They're not just talking about someone leaving their religion, generally speaking, as these other definitions were. What they're talking about is somebody leaving their religion, the Jehovah's Witness religion. And the reason we know that is because what they're saying is somebody leaving Jehovah God. So what religion on this planet is best known for promoting the name Jehovah? It's Jehovah's Witnesses. That is not to say that, of course, other religions don't promote that name, but the name is oftentimes associated with this name because that name was adopted by resolution back in 1931, wasn't it? See, so this is the religion that they're making reference to. The apostasy is from this religion. It's not just apostasy, generally speaking, from a religion. It is from this religion. In fact, they reject Jehovah's organization. But in essence, we're talking about the current numbers, however many there are right now, 8.5 to 9 million. I don't know the numbers. But more specifically, they're talking about those who take the lead in this organization.
Now, in making decisions on the publications, I understand from what you say is that you're guided by the scriptures.
That is correct.
And that involves obviously interpreting the scriptures from time to time.
That is the role of the governing body.
We're talking about the governing body of this religion. That's who we're talking about. They reject that leadership. That's what it means for them to be an apostate. So the first question they have under this definition here, should we expect that apostates will rise within the Christian congregation? They're not talking about Christianity as a whole. They're talking about the Christian congregation being Jehovah's Witnesses. They look at that as being the only true congregation that is called Christian. And if you're looking at apostasy from that lens, of course, it's going to look like you're an evil person because you're leaving them. And here's some of the logic they use as I continue on some of the highlights, some identifying marks of apostates. They seek to make others their followers, causing sectarianism and divisions and so forth. And then you have these scriptures that seem to prove that point. One scripture says that they're looking to speak twisted things. And the other scripture in 2 Timothy says they're false teachers. But the point I'm making here is that the word apostasy is defined to be specifically by this religion to be those who leave this religion. Not only those who leave the religion, that's not bad enough. Now they're saying that apostasy means those who speak against the religion. Although it's been suggested or even admonished to speak against falsehood if you hear it or see it. It's your responsibility.
You see, we are under obligation to bear witness to Jehovah, to tell the truth about him, and to expose false teachings that misrepresent Jehovah.
But here they're saying if you do that, you're suddenly an apostate. They have put a negative spin on that word. There's an article that I would really like you to read. I'm going to read some of it here. The Bible's viewpoint. Is it wrong to change your religion? This is an individual named Avatar, if I'm pronouncing that right. She began studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. So her family was upset. In my homeland, she says, changing your religion cuts you off from your community, from the community. Avatar eventually became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Was she wrong to change her religion? See, she eventually became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So she apostatized, came right in. Was she wrong? Well, let me ask the question in the reverse way. If Avatar went back to her sick religion, would she be wrong to change back? Would she be wrong to go back? The JWs would say, yes. You can be an apostate coming, but you can't be an apostate leaving and expect us to still associate with you and welcome you into our home. It's a one-way street. They do not understand the true definition of apostasy. They've taken this word and they have appropriated this word and they have weaponized this word. And that's unfortunate. The article continues. It is more important to seek to know the truth about our Creator and his purposes. The world of religions teach conflicting ideas. Logically, these teachings cannot be true. And that, by the way, can apply to one religion versus another religion teaching conflicting ideas, or it can also apply to one religion teaching multiple conflicting ideas. It can apply either way. Since our Creator wants us to search for truth, it cannot be wrong to act on the evidence that we find, even if this means changing our religion. Says it right there. Is changing our religion becoming an apostate? Does that make us unfit? The answer there is no. Again, if you're not applying the same set of scales to what you're hearing right now, what you're hearing right now is falling flat. It's making no sense to you. Because the mind continues to go, well, of course, they're leaving the truth, the true religion. That's what apostasy means. So this is very similar to what happened in the Middle Ages, right? In the Middle Ages, according to this Watchtower article, no one was free to worship as he pleased or to express opinions conflicting with those of the clergy. This clerical intolerance created a climate of fear throughout Europe. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses have such abhorrence for apostates? The answer, in a word, is fear. They have fear of displeasing God. They have fear of pleasing the devil. They fear losing their family and community. Suppose apostates are right. They don't want to take a risk in finding out. And also fear of losing out on everlasting life. That is a very real fear. They're committed to the thought that everlasting life can only be had by involvement with this particular religion. And if this religion is wrong, all bets are off. They have no hope of everlasting life. That's a very real fear. See, fear is a common theme, isn't it? The church established the Inquisition to root out individuals who dared to hold different views. Sound familiar? See, the slave's will is Jehovah's will, according to Watchtower, June 1st, 1956. Rebellion against the slave is rebellion against God. Now, who is this slave we're talking about? Well, these are substitutes for Christ, according to their version of the Bible, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 20. In a book many years ago called Qualified to be Ministers, there is this quote: "If we have love for Jehovah and for the organization of his people, we should not be suspicious, but shall, as the Bible says, believe all things," all the things that the Watchtower brings out, "inasmuch as it has been faithful in giving us knowledge of God's purposes." All the things the Watchtower brings out. And this is what caused Raymond Friends to have his crisis of conscience. He knew the difference between God and men.
I know when I was baptized on January the 1st, 1939, was when I was baptized, and I know that when I was immersed under the water, I had one thought in my mind: from now on, my life belongs to God through Christ. And I endeavored to live by that, and for the rest of my life, I was conscious that I was God's possession and I had to serve under his Son. And I tried to do that. And that's the reason when it came to a question of, will you obey men or will you obey Christ? There was only one way for me. There was no doubt in my mind. I had to obey Christ.
Although he was one of the men that was getting all these accolades, 9 years of him sitting on a governing body, he said, enough of this. And he's tried to talk to these men. And this is what caused his crisis of conscience. And he wrote a book about it. The book is called Crisis of Conscience, A Struggle Between Loyalty to God and Loyalty to One's Religion. This man saw the difference between the two. You know, something occurs to me with regard to apostates. I've been in this religion for many years. I'm no longer, but I was in this religion for many years. I've never seen or heard of anyone who leaves for conscientious/doctrinal reasons ever come back. And here's what I think the reason is. You can't unring a bell. If you sat on a jury before, you probably are familiar with this concept. You know, a judge would tell you, as a juror, disregard that last sentence. Strike that from the record, tell the court reporter. You know, jury, you know, they're writing feverishly down, because when they go back into deliberation and they reach a verdict, they want to have all the information they need in order to reach their verdict. So you're not to include what you hear at the beginning, you're not to include what you hear at the end, but you can include all the other evidence brought forward, unless the judge says, jury members, forget what you just heard. Disregard what you just heard. But here's the problem. You can't unring a bell. Once it rings, it's in your mind, and it's hard to forget it. Even if you can't bring it up during your deliberations, you know it's there. It's like a splinter in your mind. Yeah? So this is what happens with apostates. When they leave for doctrinal reasons, conscientious reasons, and the reasons are strong enough that they now see in the wholeness of this faith as being unsound, it is difficult to now go into a kingdom hall and sit there and hear it and has it have the ring of truth. It's hard. So this is what many members of this religion are faced with. Do you hear it and try to remove it from your mind, or do you not hear it? Do you refuse to hear it? And this is what the instruction is. Refuse to hear it. If you see something on television against us, pay no attention. See? Give it no mind. Turn it off. Turn away. Disregard it. And so they do. So this reminds me of a term that's used in law called willful blindness, often also called ignorance of law, is a term used in law to describe a situation in which a person seeks to avoid civil or criminal liability for a wrongful act by intentionally keeping himself or herself unaware of facts that would render him or her liable or implicated. Remember, I talked about earlier, fear of responsibility or of accountability. They don't want to hear anything that could possibly make this religion wrong in their ears, because the other fears are just too great. They don't want it. Makes sense. Who does? I didn't want to either. When I was doing my research early on, it was hard navigating that. It was like walking across coals, just hot coals. I had to make the trek, but it was painful every single step. No one wants to hear something that's going to destroy their faith in the thing that they think has a direct connection with their everlasting life. No one wants that. So they willfully stay blind. Willfully. They're told to, and they comply. Open your eyes and get the facts. Get the facts and go to where the facts lead you. How does one then overcome this? How does one overcome the willful blindness? I say it's to learn how to become an honest JW, based on Hebrews chapter 13, verse 18. Please take the time to look at this chart and see how you can move out of fear, to move into the learning zone, into the honest zone. Please take the time to read this. You have to understand the difference between a lie that's being spoken about you or an organization and the truth that's being spoken about you or the organization, but that truth hurts. You have to understand the difference between the two. Yeah? You know, the Watchtower wrote something years ago. I'm going to read this to you. It's about being a good communicator. And it says here, a loyal friend will have the courage to point out a serious fault and offer tactful guidance. That's my goal here. I considered myself a friend of this religion for years. For years. But as it turns out, Paul said, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? I haven't lied on any of these topics that I'm talking about. I haven't told a single lie. Now, if I've made a mistake, again, let me know. But I'm not out to tell lies about any of this. But now, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? All right, let's wrap it up. What is apostasy? We read about apostasy from different definitions. JWs define apostasy radically different. It's not a standing away from true worship. That is not part of what apostasy means. That is part of what has been defined by this religion about what apostasy means. It's one's leaving their previous loyalty. It can be religion. It has been appropriated by the religious domain. It can also be a political move and otherwise. Forsaking your religious system, that's apostasy. And it's promoted by this religion. So is apostasy okay? Absolutely. And it is the right of every person to do that. In fact, the JWs have on their site, does a person have the right to change his religion? And the answer is yes. The first answer to that question is yes. They have the right. And it mentions in the second paragraph there that the right to change one's religion is supported by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the United Nations has called the foundation of international human rights. And I found 3 articles in this declaration that seem to fit best with our discussion here. And I'll put those right up on the screen. So why then would this religion, try to take people's channels down? Why would this religion try to suppress people, shut them up? Why would they do that in violation of these articles here in this whole Universal Declaration of Human Rights? And they put on their own website that the person has a right to do that. And why would a person lose his honor and reputation gets destroyed if a person has a right to do that according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Because these acts are being perpetrated by an organization that has yet to understand in fullness what human rights truly are and to honor them. That's the reason. Okay, we're going to do one last thought in closing. Are you familiar with this clip? In this classic story, you had 4 individuals looking for something from someone who was purported to be able to grant great things. Instead, they discovered a fraud. When the wizard is exposed, did you notice how was he exposed? The little dog. This is how people see apostates. This is how people see those who left. This is how people see anybody on the outside world, as dogs. But you also notice who was the first to point out the wizard? The Scarecrow, the guy with no brains. And JWs see people like that too as being useless. Again, in the letter to the Romans, Paul said that such ones are empty-headed in their reasonings, that their unintelligent heart becomes darkened. But could it be that those who are viewed as dogs, could it be that those who are viewed as empty-headed are the ones who are really identifying who's behind the curtain, identifying the truth about all of this? Could it be? If that is the case, what do we do about it?
You see, we are under obligation to bear witness to Jehovah, to tell the truth about him, and to expose false teachings that misrepresent Jehovah.
We muster up courage. In my opinion, we muster up courage like this man here, this character. And I'm going to let the governing body member have the final word. If you have this courage, what will be the result?
Courage should impel us to speak and act with boldness.